A lot of people don't know this, but shady franchise salespeople can make up to $100,000 a month, 6 figures a month, ripping off unsuspecting buyers. Hundreds of buyers over the years lost their money to the NYC Bagel franchise. We're going to look at that today. How did the scam work, and what can you do to protect yourself today on Franchise City? Now, sadly, this scam happens over and over again. We've covered it on the channel. It's basically a way to print millions of dollars for these fraudsters. I covered this scam in my worst-selling book, The Dark Side of Franchising. You pick that up, $3 download on Kindle, $12.99 paperback on Amazon. And we've also covered stories like this of brands that employed these methods right here on the channel. Most franchise scams follow a similar pattern. We're going to use NYC Bagel today as the example of how these bad franchises rip off inexperienced buyers. Now, over the past decade, over 160 NYC Bagel franchises were sold in various states throughout the USA. Millions of dollars were collected over the years, often from people who were not even able to open up their stores. And of those that opened up, most of them closed, and the owners, of course, subsequently lost all their money. Now, we kept an extensive file on NYC Bagel for almost a decade, and one simple free phone call to Franchise City would have revealed everything that we knew about the brand. And that was a lot. It included things like illegal selling of franchises in registration states, fraud claims, online complaints, cease and desist orders, and a lot more. Now, you might ask, why didn't we go public with this data here on YouTube? Well, often these shady franchisors are relentlessly litigious, and in this case, also retaliatory. Websites that suggested anything bad about the franchise would have these smear websites created that dragged them through the mud. So don't ever think because we haven't covered a franchise on the channel here, that means it's a good franchise, because only a tiny fraction of our reviews that we have here on file are ever made public. Now, our service is free. If you want to vet a franchise or get a second opinion, just give us a call. I'll put the link at the end of this video. So there are basically 3 stages to these franchise scams. The first, of course, is lead generation. Now, in the case of NYC Bagel, they ran hundreds of ads on Craigslist, making highly exaggerated claims that underestimated the money buyers would need and overestimated the amount of profit that they could make. Now, ads like this one that are still live right here on Google suggested NYC Bagel was the #1 bagel franchise in the entire world. Now, always watch out for amorphous, vague terms like these that really mean nothing and are very hard to prove or disprove. #1 in what exactly? Fraud? If that was the case, they might have actually been telling the truth. Now, also watch out for aggressive advertising tactics as well, because these are often lousy franchises that are forced to advertise like crazy to pull in the unsuspecting public. Now, once the prospective buyer reaches out to the company from this lead page, next comes the misleading information. Now, keep in mind, shady franchise salespeople that just make one sale per week are making between $60,000 to $100,000 a month. And because they know exactly what to say and what to do to keep themselves out of jail, they're generally going to be able to keep doing this scam for years and years and years, hopping from one bad franchise to the next. Now, remember, when you actually sign the franchise agreement hidden within the hundreds of pages, you're going to sign that you agree you were told nothing outside of what is included in that agreement. Now, if you call the seller out on their verbal claims after you lose all your money, everything goes wrong, they're going to deny ever saying anything. And your lawyer is going to point out to you that you, in fact, signed that clause agreeing that they said nothing outside of what's in the agreement. Now, if you think, well, you know what, I'll just go to the press, your lawyer is also going to advise you that you signed an NDA, subjecting you to severe financial penalty if you reveal anything bad about the franchise. In fact, anything about the franchise at all. And this is why you hear so few stories from the thousands of people who've been ripped off by these shady franchises. So remember to trust nothing that you are told and only what is in the franchise disclosure document. Now, in the case of a completely shady franchise, unfortunately, they're going to lie even in the disclosure documents. Now, particularly watch out for claims like "you can't lose" or exaggerated guarantees of how much money that you can make. Now, franchise companies are allowed to advise you what some of the other franchises historically have earned in their system, but only if they include that data in the item 19 of their franchise disclosure. If there's nothing financial listed in the item 19, they cannot tell you anything about earnings. Now, that is not true for their owners. You can actually call franchisees, they're not bound by this law, and ask them what they're making. Now, good franchises will always temper these earnings claims by advising you that these historical earnings do not indicate future profits, because variables like your skills, your location, your demographic, your market demand, and the economy are going to have a huge impact on what you're going to make versus what these other stores have made. Now, usually if a franchise company is bad, they've really annoyed their franchise owners. These franchisees, when you call them, they're going to tell you, they're going to let you know. But in really shady cases, like in this circumstance, the franchisor actually bribes the owners to say good things. So if they call you, they give a glowing review, that person buys the franchise, they get a kickback, which can be a few $1,000s. Now, of course, you're going to be very motivated if your store is going out of business to tell people good things. So you have to be cautious in that regard as well. Now, some people, thankfully, are a little more cautious before they invest. They want to hear things outside of what the franchisor is saying. They're a little leery about that. In these cases, the franchise is going to employ third-party validation. This is often the third part of the scam. These are tactics to gain credibility and trust. Now, NYC Bagel was actually listed on the SBA Lender Registry. Now, that's a list of government-approved franchises that qualify for fast-track financing that is guaranteed by the U.S. government. Now, shady companies are going to suggest only vetted franchises, the best of the best, make these lists, which is absolutely false. Being on the SBA list is no guarantee of quality. In fact, and we've covered this on the channel, many franchises on the list have high failure rates. Now, NYC Bagel was also included in the 2017 Franchise 500 list from Entrepreneur Magazine as one of the top 500 franchises in the USA. Now, I actually searched the 2017 list as I was doing this story, and it appears that they've deleted it after the fact, apparently to avoid embarrassment. But lo and behold, they forgot to remove NYC Bagel from their sitemap. It is still listed here. So we've covered how inaccurate the Franchise 500 list is and how it is hurting buyers in a big way in one of our previous videos. I'll post that link above and also at the end of the video. Now, in addition to this, watch out for appeals to your situation. The heavy pushing of how a franchise is veteran-friendly or minority-owned, as these techniques are employed for nothing more than to make you feel comfortable and feel as if you were alongside a peer. Now, we did a video again on the scam behind these very veteran-friendly franchises. I'll post that link above and at the end as well. Now, in the case of NYC Bagel, they also told franchise buyers they would help with financing once the initial franchise fee was sent in. And if they did not get this financing, the money would be refunded. This sounds like an impossible to lose situation. Now, people didn't get financing, and the franchise just kept their money. And most people didn't have the money to pursue it in court. Many people, of course, didn't want it. It's a lot of work to take someone to court. And those that did take them to court got useless judgments that they never were able to collect upon. You also have to keep in mind, despite dozens of complaints over years and years and years to regulators and these multiple lawsuits for which judgments were simply ignored, this scam continued for over a decade. As far back as 2011, from what I can see, a buyer sued for having his money taken. He actually won judgment, but never was able to collect a penny. Now, once you're ripped off, remember, it's hard for the franchise buyer to seek relief, and it is very slow for regulators to respond, if they even respond at all. Now, finally, after years of scamming people, both Joseph Smith, who was the founder of NYC Bagel, and Dennis Mason, who was the salesperson, they finally got 3+ years in jail each. Note, however, that the charges were for tax evasion and wire fraud. And you actually have to wonder if the government didn't get ripped off themselves, if they ever would have cared enough to do anything at all. So a buyer could be forgiven for investing after seeing all of this information that all adds up to a good franchise. #1 bagel franchise in the world. Statistics on how easy it is to operate and how much money you can make, how the industry is growing. Third-party validation, inclusion to the SBA registry, and the prestigious Franchise 500 list. Also, a refund guarantee. If anything goes wrong, we'll give you your money back. Also, there was great media stories covering the success of how the NYC Bagel story was such a great institution, was growing by leaps and bounds and had tons of happy franchises, which was just made up stuff, but the press will print anything. Now, everything looks good, obviously, to an inexperienced buyer who does not know where to look. Now, there are great franchises out there, but it's hard for buyers to tell the difference. A qualified broker group like franchisecity can help you with that. Link above. Why you shouldn't trust the Franchise 500, that link is below. The veteran franchise scam, I'll put that link right here. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.